Hello and welcome to everyone. My name is Sam. I'm calling from Prospel. We're helping to put on today's Ask Us Anything with the PM&C grad team. Before we go any further, I would like to acknowledge and pay respects to traditional custodians of the land on which we all are meeting here today. I know we're from many different places. I'd like to acknowledge those all. I'd also like to pay respects to elders past, present, and emerging. As mentioned earlier, today's event is the PM&C Ask Us Anything. We're going to be asking the lovely representatives from the PM&C team all their questions about their experience, the grad program, recruitment steps, etc. as well. While we're waiting, let's just jump off. If you can jump into chat who you are, where you're calling from, that'd be great. And if you're comfortable putting your camera on, that would be awesome as well. When you put your questions in, if you could write them into the chat box, I will then be calling on you. I will either read out your question myself if you're not comfortable saying it out loud, but if you are comfortable saying it out loud, make sure you write it in that chat message. Say something like, here's my question, tell me about X. Sam, I'm comfortable saying that out loud, and I'll call on you to say that verbally to the team. Without further ado, I might throw to our guests today here, and I might start first with Katie to do a bit of an introduction to herself, and we'll throw to each of the rest of the team to do a bit of a very quick intro about who you are and what your role is at PM&C. Katie, start with yourself.
Thank you, Sam. So as Sam mentioned, my name is Katie. I'm the Assistant Director in the Entry-Level Programs team. I have been at PM&C for 5 years now. So yes, I'm very excited to talk to you all today. Thank you.
Right, should we throw next to Annabelle? On you, hey.
Hi everyone, I'm Annabelle. To give background on my uni experience, I studied public policy and international relations at the ANU here in Canberra, and I was a grad last year, and after the grad program, I am now working in schools and early childhood policy.
Fantastic. Michael, do you want to go next?
Sure thing. Hello, everyone. I'm Michael. So I studied law and development studies at the University of Newcastle, and I was a grad last year, and this year I'm an advisor in international division working at Pacific Branch.
Fantastic. Lucky last. Thoughts about yourself? Ooh, maybe frozen? All right, we might come back to, it looks like she might be frozen at the moment. Katie, we'll wait till she comes back in. Katie, first questions for you before we open up to the floor. Can you tell us a little bit about PM&C's graduate program, which of course we're all hopefully here to listen and learn a little bit more about?
Absolutely. Thank you, Sam. So the PM&C graduate program runs for 12 months. We generally commence in February each year. So should you be successful in this application process, you'll commence in February 2026. During the program, you will be exposed to multiple business areas and complete a rotation, generally around 3 or 4 rotations throughout the 12-month program. Rotations may vary across policy areas, task force, corporate and government teams. You will have networking opportunities, learning and development opportunities, and have a mentor and workplace buddy as well. Sorry, someone's knocking on my door. Typical working from home. Apologies about that. During the program, you will be you will have the opportunity to progress to the APS 4 level 6 months in the program, and then to the APS 5 level upon completion of the program. We do offer relocation assistance as well. So for those who do not live in Canberra, it is definitely something that PM&C will look after should you be successful. Now, with the application process, so applications are now open and live. And they will close on Wednesday, the 9th of April. So who we're looking for. So there is no set degree that we are specifically looking for. Sorry, I'm just getting a voiceover. Is that just me? No, all good. I can continue, Sam. Good. Sorry. So just to reiterate, we employed graduates from a range of fields and degrees. To be eligible to apply, you must have completed at least a 3-year undergraduate bachelor degree in the past 8 years. And your degree has to be completed by the 31st of December this year. You have to be able to obtain and maintain a baseline security clearance at minimum, be an Australian citizen, and be willing to relocate to Canberra. So should this all sound like you're ticking every box? Yep. Please go to the PM&C portal, career portal to apply. And during the application process, all we're asking for is your personal details and a resume as well. Apologies, there's also a section in the application where you have to submit a short blurb why you want to work at PM&C. So from here, there's 2 stages to the assessment process. First stage is psychometric testing. This will happen towards the end of April, early May. Should you be successful in this stage, you will go to stage 2, which is our virtual assessment centre. In this stage, you are required to complete a written activity, group task, and a live interview as well. And yeah, so that's our application process. Hoping to see all your names in our application. So thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Katie. I reckon we might start throwing to some wider questions from everyone. Apologies in advance for any mispronunciations of names. I am terrible at pronunciation. But I did see we've got one from Zarif, who said happy to take themselves off mute. Zarif, did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, for sure. So I actually applied for this graduate program last year, and I got to the very final stage where I had to do the group interview. And the feedback I got was really positive. There actually was no negative points, but I still didn't make it through to an offer. So I was wondering if, I suppose, any of you guys can answer this as previous grads, or Katie, you can answer it too. Do you have any tips, I suppose, for that group assessment and how I guess I could get pushed over the line?
Who wants to go first? Katie?
I'm happy to talk from, the application, the application process itself. So, yes, now we do acknowledge that it is a very competitive process. Glad to hear that you got into the final stage. That's very positive. So we did receive over 1,400 applications last year. So, definitely give yourself a pat on the back there. Tips in regards to the group activity. So don't focus on the content so much. Like, yes, you should be aware of, prepare what is required. But what we're really looking for in the group activity is, the behaviors, are you ensuring that everyone's inclusive? We're not really looking, for a clear leader to take over, take charge. So really well be prepared and be aware of yourself. So just put yourself in a workplace, picture yourself in a workplace. And yeah, so that's for the group activity. With the interviews, our hot tip is to Google the STAR method. I'm sure most of us should be aware of the STAR method, but I know panel members really, appreciate when applicants are prepared. So definitely look into that. And yeah, show that you do have a, interest in, the APS and government policy. That would definitely shine through your application. So those are tips from me. Maybe Annabelle or Michael can share about what they did during the applications 2 years ago to make them successful.
I'm happy to jump in, and one tip I would give that's maybe a little bit unconventional, but I would say don't downplay any experiences that you've had that you might not think are relevant to the graduate program. I remember in my interview, I spoke a lot about my retail job, which was a job I had for 3 years, and I think I was hesitant because I thought it's not really related to the work, but if it's your primary employment and you've achieved a lot in that job. It doesn't matter what the job is. I think just highlighting the soft skills.
Sorry, I'm just going to jump in again. I can't agree more with Annabelle. Noting you are applying for the graduate program, we're not specifically looking for any, extensive or impressive careers. So even if you have to reflect back on, completing a project for a specific, unit in university, but as long as you can apply your skills to those examples, then that will definitely shine through. So yeah, couldn't agree with you more, Annabelle. Thank you.
Michael, Miller, anything you'd like to add at all?
Yeah, just talking about group interviews as well. I think Katie might have touched on this, but it is like, especially if there is like a subject matter for the interview, how you relate to everyone in your group is going to be way more important, I think, than actually nailing whatever the particular like topic that you have to talk about or present on is. Just thinking about it in a work context, like being in PM&C, it's quite a diverse organization and you're often not necessarily an expert on what you're working on. So being able to deal with other people and value everyone's opinion and understand where different people are coming from is always important.
Thanks heaps, guys.
Awesome. Miller, I see you're back as well. Did you want to introduce yourself? Or did we missed that one before?
Sorry, it's always the most inopportune times that my internet cuts out. But my name is Mila. I graduated with an honours in Asian Studies from ANU in 2023, and then was part of the 2024 graduate program, and I'm now working in kind of net zero policy at PM&C.
Awesome. Let's move on to the next question, I reckon. It's one that Julie has asked me to read out, and it's for Annabelle, Mila, and Michael. I might stick with Mila, you're just off mute, so we'll stick with you, I reckon. Can you tell us about a typical day in your life at PM&C? What are you sort of getting up to every day?
I would say it definitely varies team by team because like PM&C, the idea is that it shadows the whole government. So every area has like quite different types of work. But generally you have like a team quick meeting, like 15-minute meeting at like 9:30. And then throughout the year, it's a little bit like your roles are seasonal. So when it's budget season, you do a lot of work on like checking that departments, like the proposals the departments are putting forward are like good and evidence-based and that the financials are all check out. You do a lot of work on, whatever your area is. So mine is, I do a lot in like resources and critical minerals policy. So kind of keeping abreast of current affairs and what other countries are doing and making sure that we're really across everything. And then a major part of our job is that we provide a lot of written briefing to the Prime Minister so that he knows what to do if one of his ministers asks him things, also if like a member of the public asks him anything, and so that we can provide a bit of policy advice. So you do spend a lot of time, learning about an issue and then writing a brief for the Prime Minister, and that involves PM&C is like quite small. I think it's about 1,000, bit over 1,000 people, and it involves a lot of like talking to other teams within the department to collate advice. So it's definitely quite a communicative, coordinative role, I think. But yeah, through to Michael and Annabelle, because I think your roles are quite different.
I'm happy to go next. So I think, very not too dissimilar to Mila's day. I usually come in very much as a like international advisor, keep across international events, current affairs, lots of news browsing first thing in the morning to know what are going to be the big issues of the day. Usually we have team meetings quite regularly, so there's usually a daily huddle. Tasks that the team has to deal with are often divvied up. And then the actual work itself. So it's a very collaborative workplace. So often you're preparing advice or providing advice to other teams. So lots of phone calls, lots of meetings. It's a lot of providing comments and questions to other people's work as well. So very collaborative.
Annabelle, how about yourself?
Very similar to Michael and Mila. Um, I think working on government priorities is probably the priority part of our work in the education team. So I think a lot of talk about big government agreements like the Better and Fairer Schools Agreement or the Preschool Reform Agreement, and those sorts of things happen continuously throughout the year, so not necessarily tied to whether it's budget or my EFO. And I think the other thing that I would say is that every day at PM&C is very different for me personally because you never know what problem is going to come up. Like at the moment, there's a cyclone going on in Queensland, and you got to figure out how all the kids are going to get to school, for example. And you would never expect to see that when you come in. So, a lot of problem solving and strategic thinking.
I think, yeah, just to jump on that, I really agree that every day is different. And something that my current team director told me when I was starting in a team was like, if you only see it at PM&C if it's on fire, and otherwise the other agencies look after it. So it definitely, like, it doesn't really matter which area you're in, you're only going to see the really interesting things, which is part of the reason I really love it. So yeah, things like cyclones, international agreements, like quite high priority stuff is what we do.
Very cool. Very particularly like obviously cyclone stuff is very very relevant right now, unfortunately. Fantastic. Timothy, I think you had a question, probably more so directed for Katie, about eligibility of experience. Did you want to ask your question?
Yeah, it's just a lot of my, or well, some of my experience has been for, I've worked for a councillor who, is a elected politician with a party here in Brisbane and done internship, for a think tank that is, explicitly aligned with one of the major parties. I'm just wondering if that kind of could cause problems in the application process. They might think, this person is too partisan to work in for the public service, or yeah, that's
Well,
basically.
that's a great question, Timothy. I don't believe so, but I think that's something that you should disclose in the application process, anyways. And noting that payments, if you are working at PM&C or any APS, you have to be apolitical anyways. So just stating that there. But it should not discredit you from the application process.
Okay. Well, thanks. Yeah.
Awesome. I mean, Katie, do you want to expand on that, the apolitical element for quite an important point for the public service, right?
Yes, absolutely. So I guess if you apply for not just for any job at PM&C, but any APS job, so you do have to be apolitical, meaning that you cannot follow any specific party, and we serve the government of the day. So noting that our name is, the Department of the Prime Minister and Cabinet, people always believe that, we work currently for Anthony Albanese. That's not the case. So we work for the government of the day. And just to reiterate the team's statement here, we are shadow agency. So therefore, if you think how I like to explain PM&C is like, having like the shadow agency. So any policy that needs to go to government will come to PM&C and then goes to the Prime Minister of the day and back to Parliament and then back down through PM&C and then will go to the corresponding party. So therefore, to be able to do that, we do need to be apolitical for that. Does that make sense? Mila, Annabelle, or Michael, did I explain that correctly? Perfect.
Awesome. I will throw next to Noah. I think we need to take self off mute. Is that right?
Yep, thanks, Sam. Hi, everyone. I was just wondering if you could speak a bit to what sort of markers of success you see at the end of the program, perhaps through your own experience and just other grads, like what general soft skills you expect people to achieve by the end of the program.
Who wants to go first?
I'm happy to start, and then we'll rely on the others to fix my mistakes. But I think that for me personally, I think I got a lot of like communicative skills that I really improved. Definitely at the beginning of the program, it does like I feel like you spend a lot of your day on the phone just trying to like organize what other teams are doing. And I remember like the first month, my supervisor was just like, "Oh, just call this other person," and I was like, "No way, am I going to be able to do that?" But by the end, you definitely get very good at kind of talking to people and also managing what different people want. I think that like part of the job is that every team is meant to represent different equities because it's meant to represent a different government portfolio. So for instance, somebody from the international division might be like, "Oh, this would be really great for our international relations," and somebody from the climate division would be like, "Except that it would be terrible for the climate." And you kind of have to balance what's in Australia's best interests, and what trade-offs can you make. And so I think that like that kind of managing stakeholders and like it's a real balancing act. I definitely got a lot better at that. And then I think you also like definitely like I think my writing skills and my analytical skills really improved across the year as well for me. But yeah, what about Annabelle and Michael?
Yeah, I think all of that is very true. Analytical skills, great. Being able to problem solve and problem solve with people is a really big one as well. You actually, I think, develop a lot of PM&C sort of knowledge by the end of the program as well, which is quite valuable. Especially Katie sort of mentioned as well, like we are sort of the owners of a lot of the cabinet process, and that's a really valuable skill to have because all departments need to have things considered by cabinet, and being able to shadow that process is, I think, a very important skill to build on. Annabelle, anything to add?
Probably two things, kind of on Mila's point about confidence and interpersonal relationship building. One thing at the beginning of last year that really scared me that the graduate team was talking about was it's really important to learn how to network and reach out to people to get coffees or go for a walk to learn about what they do. And I just thought to myself, I'm not a networker. I will never do that. And I think throughout the year, it just got easier and easier. And a lot of those typical corporate things that seem unnatural now come a lot more naturally to me, which I think is good. And I think the second thing is in the context of a shadow policy team at PM&C, which is not all of the rotations that you would do as a graduate, but I think it's learning how to make impactful policy advice and know when to push and when is best to keep the advice, if that makes sense. There's a lot of competing priorities. You got to make sure you focus on the most high priority items and give advice that is most impactful at the time.
Fantastic. Katie, anything to add, or you happy with those responses?
No, very happy. But I guess our goal is to, develop you in the best, APS advisor at the APS 5 level at the end of the program.
Actually, could you expand what's APS 5, APS advisor, Katie,
For
those who aren't familiar with it?
For those who are not aware, in the APS world, so Australian Public Service, there are levels that you will, build your career on. So, you commence at the APS 3 level, and you can find all this information on our website, on the APS website, APS-C website again. So feel free to type in, APS 3 work level standards. That is what the whole APS based their performance on. So as a graduate, you'll commence at the APS 3 levels, and then progress to the APS 4 6 months in, and then upon completion of the program, you will be assessed at the APS 5 level. So throughout the program, that is what we strive for. There's lots of learning and development opportunities out there to ensure that you are performing at the APS 5 level.
So just to clarify, for those who missed it, it's just there's potential at PM&C for 2 promotions within the first year. Am I hearing that correctly?
Absolutely, yes.
Pretty cool. Is that quite unique to PM&C? I haven't heard that with other departments before.
Most departments, they will finish up at the APS 4 level.
There you go, everyone. If you're tossing up between departments, there's a good selling point. Felicity, I think you had a question about mentoring, if you wanted to pick yourself off mute.
Yes, I was interested to hear you tell us about how the mentoring program works and what sort of advice you can seek from your mentor.
Can I start, team? Sorry, and then I'll just put it to the rest of the team just to they can elaborate with their experience. But what PM&C offers, so we have an in-house mentorship program, and we go out to the department. So anyone that is a EL1 or above, so just think about, seniors, for those who are unaware of the levels in the APS, like a senior advisor in PM&C. So we go out to the whole department and they nominate themselves to be a mentor. So historically, we've had a lot of interested parties wanting to be a graduate mentor. So it's always a well-received, program throughout the department. And then, so from there we allow it. Moving forward, it's going to be an organic relationship. It will be up to the graduate and the mentor to establish what that relationship looks like. I know some graduates prefer to meet monthly. Some other graduates prefer to meet, 2 or 3 times a year. But I'll throw to the team now so they can speak about their experience.
Who'll pick up first? Annabelle, I reckon.
Happy to start. I think my mentor was working in a completely different area to what I was working in, which I found to be really interesting and really useful. And I think it was a very informal and organic relationship. Like, we would get coffee together and she would just ask me what my goals are and if there's any ways that she can help. And I think in the context of being a grad, I was just quite keen to listen and hear about her career experiences. Oh, the lights have turned off. But I think I would also highlight that there's a lot of informal mentoring opportunities at PM&C. I think probably all of my supervisors from last year in my grad program, I would consider informal mentors of sorts too, who I still keep in touch with.
Similar experience. Mila and Michael, you want to add much? Who wants to go? Michael?
Happy to go. Yeah, I definitely think the mentoring as well, like it can really be whatever you have questions of that week. I talked a lot about career advice, especially outside of PM&C. I think it's nice to hear people's experience of what their careers looked like, because everyone had a different pathway in the public service, and there is a lot of diversity in where you can go. But again, to say what Annabelle, I think, was touching on as well with the informal opportunities, you really, I think as a grad, there is an expectation that people are trying to teach you things. And so I found like in most of my teams, there was often a conscious effort to try and give me opportunities to learn and develop and as much feedback as I can to sort of become the best advisor that I could be by the end of my program.
I think I would definitely echo what Michael and Annabelle have said. I think that every mentor is like quite different. And I think you generally get matched. It's like hard to match you with somebody who's in your area of work. But I actually think it's, as Annabelle was saying, really valuable to have somebody quite different because they definitely open your eyes a bit to all of the things that the department does. I think my mentor was really good. I found her really helpful, and she's still like agreed to informally mentor me after the grad year. She was like a treasury grad like 15 years ago, and then worked in the Department of Industry, Science and Resources. And I think both of those like quite male dominated, historically have been quite male dominated departments. So she was really helpful for me to like, I think, sort of tell me what was like, PM&C is like a very wholesome place. So I definitely never had to deal with any kind of like discrimination, but I think like just telling you to be confident and like coaching me in that regard. So I think that was really helpful for me. But yeah, definitely agree with Michael and Annabelle as well about like giving you a bit of perspective of what the rest of the public service does and like the different avenues that you can go down.
Fantastic. Thanks, everyone. Abby, I think you had a question. You have to take yourself off mute.
Yep, thank you. I was just wondering, so once the grad year wraps up, how much scope do you have, like say one of your rotations you really enjoyed? How much scope do you have to try and go into that team or area? And then also, sorry, this is two-pronged, which is a bit annoying. There's obviously a lot of room for growth within the grad year. Does that sort of continue after quite quickly as well? What does that look like, I guess? Thank you.
I'm happy to start again on this one. So I guess I'll throw to the team shortly so they can talk about their experience and, if they did complete a rotation in the current placements now. But we are currently still designing what the final placement process will look for the 2026 year. However, in previous years, it was up to graduates to network and seek where they wanted to end up for the final placement. In the 2023 cohort, I believe they did a preferencing system where, business areas would be like, right, we're wanting to take on a grad at the APS 5 level, and then the graduates will go then and preference each business area for their final placement. So this is all up in there at the moment. It's sitting with executives to decide what the final placements look like, but I'll throw to the team to discuss, their experience.
Michael, should we go with you first?
Yeah, happy to go first. So from my experience, how I came about ending up in like Pacific branches, I did a rotation there. So it was sort of my third rotation. So I'd done a few things, done Pacific. I left, did a final rotation, and then I was asking some of the teams that I really liked, which included Pacific, if I could come back, and Pacific had space for me, and so they offered me a place, and that's how I landed in Pacific. Definitely, I think it depends, like for lots of, I think, different teams. Like one of the things I found was there were lots of teams that I really enjoyed that I didn't necessarily think I would enjoy or wouldn't have thought when I joined the department going in. So I think it's good to approach the final placement with an open mind, because you can only learn if you enjoy something by doing. And I think that's something I found was there was a lot of areas I was interested in going, not just the place I wanted to go from the start. In terms of the second bit of your question about opportunities after finishing or like landing a final place at the end of the grad program, I think you become an advisor at the end of the program. So I've only been in my final placement for about a month, but I found that being an advisor and an APS 5, you get given ownership of like really distinct bits of work in a way that you don't necessarily get to have as a grad, just because you're doing a 3-month stint or a 4-month stint at a time. And so I think that's a really valuable learning opportunity that then builds on your career going forward, is having more carriage of bits of work and also being able to follow bits of work for longer as well.
Mila?
Sorry. I think just jumping off what Michael was saying on the second part of your question, was just, I do, definitely agree that you, like at the end of the grad program, there's still kind of a lot of learning left to go. You kind of have learned the foundational skills, but you kind of haven't done a whole year in a whole team, so you haven't seen what happens through the cycle and stuff. So most teams are really passionate about your learning and like will really support you to stretch yourself and try new things. And also PM&C as a department, I think is like everyone is pretty keen on learning. So there's like loads of optional training that I feel like actually a lot of people turn up to. We get lots of like lectures come in. There's always like talks. The secretary has like, I think for a while he had like a book club series or something where he invited like authors in to interview them. So there's like also a lot of like external training that you can opt into, and there's like people love it, like half the department turns up. And then on the first part of the question about your final placement, I agree with Michael. Some people, I think, in our cohort went into teams that they hadn't done a rotation through, but I'd say like 95% of people had a rotation that they really loved and the team loved them. And either there was space, sometimes a team like stretches themselves to make space for you as well, which is really nice. So, and I agree with what Michael was saying about, I don't know, like what I'm doing now. Obviously, I've always cared a lot about the environment, but coming into the net zero space was definitely not something I expected at the beginning of the year. I'd like done my background in Asia studies, and I was like quite keen to just continue on that. But you do have your eyes open to kind of what the government does in a lot of areas that is really interesting. But yeah, I'll throw to Annabelle.
Yeah, definitely. Those are really great summaries of both parts of the question. I feel like on the like final job, one thing I would add is regardless of how the process is done, I think you're very lucky as a grad to be able to rotate through multiple areas. And one thing I noticed at PM&C is that everyone really wants to help. So I think people are very keen to connect you with other people who might have a job available, or if you're really interested in a team, then they'll also connect you. I think for our cohort at least, most people found something that they were really, really happy with. So I don't think it's something to be overly concerned by. And the second part of the question on like progression, I just think, yeah, it feels like transitioning from a grad to a permanent advisor is almost like a completely different job because you get to own something of your own and you're accountable for it, and you can't use being a grad as an excuse anymore. So it already feels like you're progressing quite quickly, but there are definitely lots of opportunities to get promoted or try something new in a different team if you want to later on.
You've all spoken very glowingly about the sort of work and the sort of the rotations and things like that. I might actually interject with a question on my own before I keep going with those from the audience. Is there anything any of you in particular are very proud of when it comes to a piece of work that you did as a grad or more recently, or the coolest thing that you think you've done? Anything you're happy and willing to share and able to share? Annabelle, might stick with you since you're last up.
I think actually something that I really enjoyed in my grad year, in my first rotation, I was in the Office for Women on doing women's economic policy. And I did this like tracking and reporting exercise where I basically tracked all these government initiatives and looked at how those initiatives impacted gendered outcomes, whether it's positive or negative. Um, and then after I tracked that, I did some data analysis and then made it into a report that I got to present to people in the department. And I think I really enjoyed that because it was not a task that I thought I would be able to do coming from a humanities background. Doing Excel is a bit scary. But it's a good opportunity to like own my own work and a more of a stretch opportunity given it was my first rotation as well. Yeah.
Who wants to go next? Mila?
I was just like trying to think of exciting things. I think that one of my top things also comes from my first rotation, which was in the international division. I was in the Asia branch. And we were prepping for the ASEAN summit, which is like getting sort of world leaders from across Asia together for a meeting. And Australia is actually technically not part of it, but we were hosting the summit in Melbourne last year. And within like the first month of my program, I was in the team and we were like, creating so many different types of briefs on like every different country in Asia for the Prime Minister. And then we got flown down to Melbourne and like, we're in the summit and watching things happen. There were like people running everywhere and we were like frantically printing briefing packs, but it was just like, it was so cool. And I think it's like definitely exposure that you don't often get as a grad. I think in a lot of departments, you have to be quite senior to go to something like that. But without knowing us very well or like seeing very much of our work I was with another grad in my branch, and within the first month, like, everyone was super keen to like stretch us and provide a learning opportunity and fly us and like teach us. And even though we were a lot slower, like help us to do things. So that was just like, it was a really exciting thing for me. But Michael?
Yeah, mine actually is quite similar to Mila's, really. My first rotation was in the protocol and visits branch. So they do a lot of the protocol for the Prime Minister when he's either going overseas or if they call it a guest of government visit. So someone, usually it's a president or a prime minister that's coming to visit Canberra. And so off the back of ASEAN, we had like the president of the Philippines, we had the prime minister of Vietnam. They all came up to Parliament House, they shoot the cannons off. You're up there in Parliament House moving people about, escorting, Vietnamese cabinet ministers to and from the bathroom, which seemed more glamorous at the time than it might sound. And it's really cool. Like you're part of these like big sort of historical moments, even if you're just being there. And coming from Newcastle to Canberra, it was the whole Canberra bells and whistles that I sort of wanted to experience. And so that was a really, I think, cool. It was a lot of work, but it was a lot of fun right off the bat. Because I guess the thing about PM&C is we are the like Prime Minister's we're his department. So a lot of the support that is needed to sort of do those big leader level events comes from PM&C.
Very cool. All of that. That's great. I might read out a question from Isabel around, I think it's probably best for Katie, around mature age applicants. It's two-parter. Isabel sort of shared that graduated in 2014 and has since then done another bachelor as well as a graduate certificate last year. So I guess firstly, would you accept those candidates? Part one of the question. Isabel's also shared that she's done some volunteering experience, particularly around bachelor studies, and then started focusing on started in family last few years, and is just re-entering the workforce. So I guess, one, would you accept someone who hasn't graduated in the last 2 years or so? And two, in terms of recent work and volunteering, should only be the most recent stuff, or should Isabel be including everything that might be relevant over her experience?
Yeah, I'm very happy to answer that. Thanks, Sam. So, yeah, we definitely do accept and have mature age graduates in all cohorts that I have been involved with. So like I said, I have been within the team for the last 5 years. That says a lot about, PM&C and the team I work in. But yeah, so every year there's definitely mature age graduates. We do not discriminate against age, against anyone. But yes, for the second part of the question, so I guess my tip is to really apply when it comes to the virtual assessment center. Really think about the examples that you will have. Not using that particular one example across all 5 or 6 questions, however many there are, and really trying to diversify your answer. So, if you are using, the one example per question, really go into the detail. It's all about the detail when it comes to interview questions and answering those questions. That's what panel members want to see. So really use the STAR method. I keep going back to the STAR method. But if you don't know what that is, please Google it. Use the STAR method and go into detail. And I believe it was Annabelle Miller who said earlier, never downplay your experience. So definitely play on that and, use the interview as an opportunity to showcase your experience. Did I answer that?
I guess the question, I guess, and like in terms of experience, it's okay if it was, questions initial. It doesn't matter when it was the experience.
It doesn't matter when.
Yeah.
And congratulations, if you're still online, congratulations on starting a family.
Awesome. Says thanks, Katie. Perfect. I think, let me go back through to my questions. Timothy, you had a question about foreign language. Did you want to ask that out loud again?
Yeah. just sort of, are there any areas or rotations where foreign language skills might be sort of relevant? And I mean, mine is in German specifically, so just to give more info.
Happy to answer that again. That's pretty cool. I wish I could speak German. Now, interesting fact, no. So to answer your question quickly, no. In short, unless Michael, Annabelle, and Mila think otherwise, but it's definitely not an advantage as such. But interesting fact, and our secretary, Glyn Davis, Professor Glyn Davis, speaks German. And I had to attend an event and he threw me because he said something to me in German. And I was like, does he think I'm German? But that was not the case. He just likes to speak German. But so yeah, so that's on me. Team, are you guys aware of any foreign language benefits?
I would say it's definitely like not a requirement, but I do think it can be useful. I think there's a grad in our cohort who I think she speaks German and Russian. And she works in a Europe team now, and like it's definitely quite useful for being able to access the news. And yeah, sometimes look at things. It's definitely like not a requirement, but can be helpful. And I think that there's some other depending on where you end up in your like final rotation, I think that having a second language and being able to access international sources can be really useful. Not a requirement, but it makes your job easier sometimes. I don't know if Michael or Annabelle's got anything to add.
Yeah, no, definitely echo what Mila said. I think would never say it's like a mandatory thing for any team at PM&C, but I think it is something that would set you apart and add value. So it's a skill that you have that's quite unique. So I think that's something that you can bring to lots of different teams.
Awesome. Now, conscious of time, we're about 10 minutes to 3 for those of us on that savings time. But the team have sort of flagged they're happy to stay a little bit longer if you do have any last questions, depending on how much we've got remaining. I can see this one from Julie, which I'll ask, and then I've got one or two of my own that I might throw their way. But if you do have any questions, last questions, now's the time to get them in, particularly if you haven't asked anything so far. I mean, there's been some great questions from the wider audience, so I'm sure you've learned a lot, but get them in now if you can. But I will ask Julie's question. Again, I might direct this one to Katie, and then everyone can sort of potentially even share their own experience with degree backgrounds. But Julie's asked, I did a Bachelor of Nursing, but I'd love to get into policy. Would I be eligible for the program, or do you need to have done a degree in law or international relations? I think it's already shared their own backgrounds, but Katie, short answer?
Great, thank you. This is quite a frequently asked question that we do get, and I believe there was someone in the 2023 cohort, a graduate that also studied nursing. So absolutely. So we are not seeking any specific degree. So any degree can apply to our grad program, and I guess that's what makes our grad program so competitive and so attractive. Because yeah, we're not, just seeking, one set degree. So definitely not required to have any policy making skills either. So I guess all we are after is graduates that are wanting to apply the skills that they learn at university to policy making. We will, there will be lots of trainings and exposure to each rotation that will, I guess, provide you that, whole policy making advisor. Sorry, what I'm trying to say is that definitely not required, but there will be opportunities within the program to become a policy advisor and apply those skills that you've learned in university to the job.
Awesome. Anyone else got anything to add in terms of degrees and different backgrounds and things like that? Otherwise, I can keep going. Cool. Perfect. Right. Well, again, if you've got any questions, get the last ones in now. Otherwise, I'm going to, there's a few that's jumped in. Isabel sort of says, any tips for psychometric testing? Maybe we'll throw to those who've gone through the recruitment process. Mila, let's big smile. We'll pick on you first.
I was gonna
Any
think
tips?
I think that I think that every year is probably a bit different. I also applied for a couple of different departments and noted that every single set of psychometric testing was different. I think like ultimately it's I think that like there are probably ways that you can think your way around it, but generally speaking, I think you just have to kind of do your best. There were definitely ones in there that I thought I failed. Like you have to like there was one in our year where we had to like read a graph really quickly and like give results, and that's definitely not a strong point of mine. But then there are other ones as well, just sort of like testing your values and stuff. So I think that as long as you're kind of honest about yeah, what you do think, I'm sure you're a very nice person. So I think that generally speaking, it's just kind of a bit of a stepping stone. I don't have any specific tips, but I don't know if the others might.
Just echoing, I think they're all different as well. So I did a few different ones, and I think how Miller described it is very good advice.
I feel like, just to jump in, I don't think you can really game psychometric testing. Like, I think just back yourself because, as has been mentioned multiple times, we're looking for so many different people at PM&C. I don't think it would matter what your personality is, or, you know, I think just be yourself. I don't think you should worry about how to best game the psychometric testing. That's just my opinion.
Thank you. I might add to that. Absolutely correct, team. There's no, the great thing about psychometric testing is that most tests, there's not the correct answer, and we're definitely not, assessing against a specific personality type. We definitely don't opt into those tests. But yes, just answer truthfully, and yeah. So just again, think back to apply yourself in the workplace and how you would answer that question. There's a lot of problem-solving questions, situational judgment. So yeah, so just put yourself, think you're in the workplace and what would you do if you were presented with that situation.
Noah, I think you had another question if you wanted to ask.
Yes, thank you. I was wondering about how you balance providing advice on issues that seem to perhaps require urgent change while working in a system that might require slower change than what you would like to see.
It's a good one. Who wants to go first? I'm going to pick on Annabelle, I reckon.
That is a really good question, and that is really hard to answer. I think, to summarize it, I think that's part of the job, is figuring out how you can best achieve the outcomes that are requested or required. And you're right, sometimes it does require like a long period of implementation. So it can't be as immediate as you may think. But yeah, I think it's a judgment call a lot of the time, and it's about prioritizing what you think you can get done at the time. And also, I think I would raise secondly is because we are here to serve the government of the day, it really depends on what the government's priorities are. So if you're in an area where it is a huge government priority, things are probably going to move a lot faster, I would say. Maybe Mila, you can jump in on that.
Yeah, I feel like taking like a slightly different spin would very much echo Annabelle's comments. I think that the areas that I rotated through were less like implementation focused than education. So I was quite surprised. I think in my mind I had this like government moves super slowly, change is like never happens, it's so hard to get anything through. But actually I think that when things need to move fast, they move like so fast. You just cannot keep up. So in some ways, like, yeah, I think urgent things do tend to get pushed through. And I think that's something that when they don't, I had to kind of figure out is that your area feels like to you, obviously, because you're like so deep in it, you're like, this is the most important thing that is happening to government right now. Like, why aren't they moving faster? But of course, like the department does the whole of government. So like to me, I'm like, we need to push this like climate policy through or whatever. But then like an education policy is much more important at the time. So that's what gets through. And so kind of having that perspective about actually like everyone is doing such a huge amount of work and there are so many different areas that government is spread across that kind of like, yeah, everything is urgent, but everything can kind of, yeah, change speeds. I think it's like levels of urgency. But yeah, I really would say something that really surprised me in this job was how fast things move. Like you can, yep, a lot of big change can happen very fast. Don't know if you had anything to add, Michael.
Yeah, no, definitely agree with that. Also agree that things can move quite quickly and change in a matter of days or hours or hour. Very quickly. That's all happened while I've been here. I think one of the interesting things as well, and this is something I'm noticing that I've noticed more as I've gone through the department is seeing people in more senior positions, how they use their influence and the points that they choose to push on as well, especially in those sort of things that do need to be moving quicker. I think there is a real like art to how PM&C and especially really good PM&C senior people will push to get things moving. And I think that's something as a grad and as an advisor, I'm still trying to learn from them and will probably be learning for a while.
Awesome. Thanks, team. I might fire off Timothy's question very quickly, which was how many grads are we hiring this year? Katie, do you have a rough number aiming for?
Yes, thank you. We don't have that set in stone just yet, but this year's cohort is 25. The previous cohort was 36. So depending on, I guess the government of the day, as we're all aware, an election is coming. So yes, I guess it all depends on what happens in the government world. Our executives will relay that down to us in early July. So once the assessment centre is complete, we'll be able to share that information. But we are looking at around the 30 mark for this year, unofficially.
Perfect. Conscious of time, I might fire through my last few questions. And this one, two that I'll go for. The first is, or they're both all answers. For a student who lands a job with you or a graduate, any advice that you give them to, survive and thrive in their graduate year and beyond? Is there anything they shouldn't be doing as well? So a bit of a two-parter question there. Michael, do you want to go first?
Yeah, to survive and thrive, I think the best thing you can be is be curious and open to new experiences. PM&C there's heaps of areas here that are really interesting. So I think opening up to those experiences is great. I think things not to do, probably just like, again, come in with a very closed like a position of what you want to end the program doing. I think being open to where you might land is quite a valuable thing. And also, I think just looking after yourself in your year, it's a lot of change and a lot of exciting things, but always like take some time off as well. You're very entitled to it and look after your like well-being.
Who wants to go next? Annabelle?
Very similar to what Michael said, I would say like the best tip is generally to be open-minded. There's probably going to be a lot of things that you do throughout your year that you might not have thought you would, first of all, enjoy, but second of all, be good at, and you'll probably surprise yourself. And also like seek opportunities that are outside of your comfort zone. And I think what not to do, it's probably just another tip, to be honest. Just good to be like use your humility and be humble. I think being a grad, it's great to have like an open mind and listen to people because there's a lot of people with a lot of experience in your area. So just be enthusiastic to listen and learn because you will probably have a lot to learn.
Let's throw to Katie next, I reckon, in terms of surviving and thriving in the first year.
Yes, honestly, just be yourself. That's my biggest tip. That's who PM&C is as well. We're not this, certain individual. We're not the same. We all think differently. But yeah, just be willing to learn and be true to yourself, and opportunities will definitely be there. Tips on not what to do. If you are successful, at induction, we'll go through, all the fun things on compliance space. So, there will be a lot of tips there on what not to do in the graduate program, especially, making sure that, you act professionally, etc. So I will hold that off till induction, which is a very fun time.
Mila, bring us home. Any tips and tricks, anything they shouldn't be doing?
I think mine is actually very similar to the others, which I think means that it's like a big consensus across the department. But I would say that in your grad year, your like best asset, no matter where you're like what your background is your ability to learn and like your eagerness to learn, because you will just be thrust into completely different areas and like they'll teach you, but you have to be expected to like push yourself and like really be open to trying new things. And teams really want grads who are willing to come in and just like give it a go and get it wrong and then improve. So that's definitely my number one tip, is just like learning is a skill that you should practice. And then what not to do. I think that it is like, at the end of the day, I think that being in public service is actually quite a privileged position, in that you often see a lot of things before they go public and you're making decisions, not like it goes through a big clearance change, so it's never going to be on your shoulders. But I think like you are making decisions that's going to affect the lives of like real people around you. So I think that like taking that seriously and like respecting the job is something that is quite important. And so like, yeah, that's probably my big tips.
Awesome. And I might finish on one final question. Again, everyone answered. Mila, I'm going to stick with you since you're off mute. I'm sure that many of the grads and those on the call today are sort of tossing up their options, sort of looking around different departments, maybe in the private sector as well, working out where they want to apply. So give us in a sentence or less, why should students, be prioritizing working at PM&C? What makes it unique and an attractive place to work?
I think that the thing that makes it the most attractive is the huge amount of variety, because it is like it is the entire public service in one department. Like an entire portfolio in PM&C is like 5 people. So you see literally everything that the Australian government does, including through like its finances, its cabinet processes, literally every area of policy all happens at PM&C. So I think like, sorry, that's more than a sentence, but I think variety is my hot topic word.
Love it. Annabelle?
I was gonna say variety, so I would probably say like what Mila was saying, the perspective of your work is really interesting. Like there aren't many departments where you're able to see basically you see bits and pieces of basically every single policy area across the Australian government, and it really gives you a great insight into how the government works and how they prioritize issues. And I think secondly, I'm not sure if Michael's going to mention it, but I would say the culture at PM&C has a very, very good reputation. It's not just in the department. It's like I've heard it from friends in different departments. Like I've heard it from people who have worked in many different departments, that it's a very welcoming and inclusive atmosphere, and people are really like wanting you to succeed, especially as a grad.
Michael.
Thanks, Annabelle. I was about to say that. yeah, it is a place people keep coming back to because it's a good place to work. And as a grad, people look after you. I guess what I would say is my sentence is that if you become a grad at PM&C, when you leave PM&C, you really do have like the whole public service as an option for where you can go. So it's a great place to like learn more about what you might want to do long term and position yourself for that.
Lucky last, Katie. Why should students apply?
Well, thank you, team, for taking all my selling points. But I guess, yeah, just to opportunities at PM&C, full stop, as you know, as a graduate specifically, but also like all staff opportunities. You know, we have our inclusion, diversity networks, just the opportunities that, come from that is huge. Like just last Friday, we had, a whole departmental barbecue going on, celebrating all the networks at PM&C. So, and then we have this amazing social club that the graduates lead as well. They get to run fun events there, and stock up on the snack shack. So yes, there is a snack shack at PM&C, and sorry, this is a very long sentence, but yeah, so I'm gonna wrap it up there. That's
The snack shack. Is it just a
snacks?
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I love it. Simple.
Snacks. That's where I go daily when I am in the office.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think we'll wrap it up there, everyone. Thanks so much to you all for your fantastic questions and how interactive the chat and jumping up. I think just about every question's either been set off mute or have camera on, so it's fantastic, great work. And big thanks to the entire team here for, your time aside to answer questions from these eager students and grads and those keen to work at PM&C. So hopefully the team will see all your applications in the program, potentially also starting in the office next year when the program kicks off. But yes, I think we'll call it there, I reckon. So again, thanks everyone for today, and the recording, of course, will be up on the PM&C Possible profile. Applications currently open. Closing when? Again, Katie, for everyone? You might have missed it earlier. 9th of April. 9th of April. So get it in now. And yeah, keep an eye out for future events with Possible and PM&C team on their profile. Cool. Thanks, everyone. We'll call it there.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.